The call that changed everything the day had started like any other for Sundar Pichai. He sat at the edge of his bed, staring out the window at the gray morning sky over Palo Alto. His phone buzzed beside him, as it always did. Dozens of notifications. Meetings, emails, reminders, nothing unusual. Nothing that suggested his life was about to change, but then the call came. He almost didn't answer. The number wasn't saved. He assumed it was just another work thing. Maybe a journalist. Maybe a partner from the other side of the world. He let it ring once more, and then something made him pick up. "Hello?" he said softly. The voice on the other end was one he hadn't heard in years. "Anna here," it said. "Your sister." There was a pause. Time slowed. Sundar stood, phone still pressed to his ear. His heart skipped. He hadn't spoken to Anna in almost a decade. "Anna?" he whispered. "Is everything okay?" Her voice cracked. "I need your help." Growing up in Chennai, Sundar and Anna had been close. Not just siblings, but friends. They shared everything, secrets, stories, snacks stolen from their mothers. Kitchen. Sundar had always been the quiet one, thoughtful and kind. Anna had been louder, full of laughter and mischief. They had dreamed together. Sundar dreamed of technology, of building things. Anna dreamed of people, of stories and teaching, and community. Their bond had survived the noise of the city, the pressures of school, the small joys of a modest home. But life, as it often does, pulled them in different directions. Sundar got a scholarship. He left India, first to study, then to work. Google had been just a job at first. Then it became something else. Before he knew it, he was leading, creating, changing lives. And somewhere along the way, Anna disappeared from the day to day. Messages stopped. Calls became rare. He told himself it was normal. People got busy. Time moved. Love stayed, but now. Her voice was trembling. "I am in trouble," she said. I didn't know who else to call. She was in a small village in Tamil Nadu, working with the school there, teaching girls from poor families. She had been there for almost 3 years. Sundar listened quietly as she spoke, as she explained how the school was under threat. "The land is being sold," she said. "The children have nowhere to go. I tried everything. The owner won't listen, and the local officials, they've stopped answering my calls." He could hear the frustration in her voice. But more than that, he heard something deeper fear. "Why didn't you come to me sooner?" Sundar asked gently. "Because I didn't want help from the Google CEO." She laughed bitterly. "I wanted to fix it myself. I thought I could, but I failed." Those words cut deep. "You didn't fail," Sundar said. "You cared. You stayed. That's more than most people would do." "That's not enough anymore," she said. "If the school closes these girls, they'll be back on the streets. Their lives will vanish before they begin." He looked out the window again. The sky was lighter now, but inside something had grown heavy. "I'm coming," he said. "What?" Anna asked. "You can't just leave. Your job, your family." "You called," Sundar said simply, "and I heard you. It took less than a day to arrange. The board would understand. His team could handle things for a week or two." He packed lightly. 1 suitcase. No suits. No meetings. As the plane lifted off the ground, Sundar thought about his sister. About the village. About the girls who had trusted her, who had found hope through her teaching. He wondered what he could even do. He wasn't a lawyer. He wasn't a politician, but he was still a brother. When he landed in Chennai, the heat hit him like a memory. He took a car through winding roads, through villages where time moved differently. He saw boys playing cricket in the dust, women carrying water on their heads, men talking over chai. Eyes narrowed in quiet debate. Finally, he saw her. Anna stood at the gate of a crumbling school building. Her hair was tied back. Her clothes were simple. Her face was tired, but her eyes still burned with that old fire. They didn't speak at first. They just hugged. 10 years of silence melted away in that moment. Then Anna pulled back. "You really?" came, she whispered. Of course, Sundar said. I don't know if you can help. She warned. Then we'll fail together, he replied. Inside the school, Sundar met the girls. They were shy at first. Then one of them asked him if he had built their mobile phone. He smiled. No, he said. But maybe I helped someone who did. They laughed. They asked questions. Some wanted to be doctors. Others wanted to build robots. One girl said she wanted to fly planes. Anna watched from the doorway, eyes filled with pride and pain. After the girls left, she showed Sundar the papers. The land had been sold months ago. No notice, no warning. The buyer was a wealthy businessman with ties to local leaders. He wanted to build a resort. I tried talking to him, Anna said. He laughed at me? Sundar looked at the name on the document. It was a name. He recognized not from politics, but from Silicon Valley. The man who bought the land wasn't just a businessman. He was an investor. One of the first to fund a startup that had once tried to compete with Google. They had lost, and the investor had never forgotten. This isn't about money, Sundar said. This is personal. So what now? Anna asked. Sundar stood silently. Then he said, we fight, but not like him. We fight our way. Asterisk, the enemy in the mirrors. Morning in the village was slow and warm. Birds sang softly as the sun climbed over the distant hills, casting golden light across the fields. Sundar sat on a worn wooden bench outside the school, watching the village slowly wake up. It had been a long night. After Anna had shown him the documents, proof that the land their school stood on had been sold behind their backs. Neither of them had slept. He held the papers in his hand now, reading every line again. It wasn't just a simple real estate transaction. It was cold, calculated. The buyer hadn't just taken advantage of the school. He had targeted it. There was no mistaking the name. Rajiv Sanghera. The name echoed in Sundar's mind like a warning bell. 15 years ago. Rajiv had been a star, charismatic, sharp. He'd started a tech company in San Francisco that promised to reinvent the internet. Investors had lined up to support him. Sundar remembered the meetings. Back then, he was still finding his place at Google, leading small teams, building products quietly while people like Rajiv made headlines. Rajiv had once walked into a room and owned it. And then, almost as quickly, he had fallen. The product failed. Users left. Reviews were brutal. And when the company collapsed, many whispered that Rajiv's ego had been bigger than his vision. In the silence that followed, he had blamed others. One of those people was Sundar. The truth was, Sundar had advised Google against acquiring Rajiv's company. He hadn't done it out of spite. It simply didn't align with what users needed. But Rajiv had never forgotten. And now here he was, years later, in a remote village in India, taking away something far more precious than code. He wasn't after profit, he was after pain. Inside the school, Anna was teaching a group of girls math using stones and sticks. They sat in a circle on the floor, bright eyes focused, small hands reaching for shapes. Sundar watched from the doorway, silent. This was the heart of it all, the reason they were fighting. Anna looked up and smiled when she saw him. But there was worry behind her smile. I've been thinking, she said, after class. We need to go to the media. Tell the story. Maybe someone will help. Sundar hesitated. That could work, he said slowly. But if Rajiv finds out, he might speed things up. We don't know how far he'll go. Anna crossed her arms. So we stay quiet? Let him win? No, Sundar replied. We just don't play his game. She frowned. What does that mean? It means we dig. We find out what he's hiding, and we build our plan around truth. That afternoon, Sundar made some calls. Quiet calls. People in Delhi, people in Mumbai, people who owed him favors. It wasn't about pulling rank. It was about using the network he'd built through trust and time. While he made calls, Anna took him to see the village elders, old men with wise eyes and tired hands. They remembered when the school was first built on land that had been donated by a family long gone. No one had questioned its ownership for decades. But when land became valuable, History became blurry. You have to understand, one elder said. This village has no power. People like Rajiv, they can do what they want. The law is not always for us. Sundar nodded. But the truth still matters. Truth doesn't feed children, the man said gently. We need more than truth. We need someone who won't leave. Those words sank deep. Asterisk that night. Sundar walked alone by the edge of the village. The stars were bright overhead, and the sound of crickets filled the air. He thought about his life, about the glass offices, the code reviews, the investor meetings. He had always believed in quiet strength, in doing the right thing without shouting . But now, that wasn't enough . He had to do something bold. He sat under a banyan tree and opened his laptop. There was no internet signal, but he opened an old file anyway, something he hadn't looked at in years. It was a proposal he had once written before he became CEO. It was about digital inclusion, about bringing knowledge to remote places. It had been forgotten over time, buried under bigger projects. Asterisk now. It meant something again. He spent hours rewriting it, not for Google, but for the girls. It was no longer just a proposal. It was a plan. If they couldn't stop Rajiv legally, maybe they could offer something stronger. A vision too powerful to ignore. Something that would force attention, force change. In the morning, Sundar and Anna drove to the nearest town. They wore simple clothes. No titles, no cameras. Just two siblings trying to protect something small and sacred. They met with a local lawyer named Ravi. He was young, sharp, and tired of seeing the rich win. Ravi looked through the land documents. He frowned. This isn't just bad, he said. It's illegal. The school was protected under a trust. If someone sold it, they either forged papers or bribed the right people. Can we prove it? Anna asked. Ravi nodded slowly. Yes, but it will take time. And money. Sundar placed a hand on the table. We'll get both. But as they left the office, Anna's phone buzzed. A message from one of her students. She read it and her face went pale. What is it? Sundar asked. Anna turned the phone to him. School had been locked overnight. A sign now hung on the gate. Private property. Trespassers will be prosecuted. They rushed back. Villagers stood outside the school, confused and angry. The girls were crying. Their books, their bags, everything. Inside, the gate was chained. And standing nearby, leaning against a black SUV, was a man in sunglasses. Rajiv Sanghera. He smiled as they approached. Long time no see, Sundar, he said. Small world, isn't it? Sundar didn't reply. Rajiv looked around mockingly. Funny, all this way from Silicon Valley to save a mud school in the middle of nowhere. Very noble. You don't belong here, Anna said, her voice trembling. Neither does the school, Rajiv said, stepping forward. It's done. The land is mine. I'm not the enemy. Progress is. He looked directly at Sundar. You took something from me. Now I'm just returning the favor. These are children, Sundar said. Not pawns in your game. Rajiv leaned in. Then protect them, if you can. He got into his car and drove away. Anna sat on the steps of the locked school, her face buried in her hands. Sundar stood beside her, quiet. The villagers waited, watching. Something needed to be done. Not just words. Not just papers. A moment later, Sundar turned to them. Build it again, he said. Anna looked up. What? We build it again, he repeated. Right here, next to it. With our own hands if we have to. School is not a building. It's people. It's us, the villagers murmured. The girls stepped closer. Sundar continued. We'll fight in court. But we don't stop learning. We don't stop teaching. We make so much noise that no one can look away. He looked at Anna. You once told me stories change the world. So let's write one. She stared at him for a long time. Then she said, Okay, she said. Let's begin. Asterisk the lie she never meant to tell the morning after Rajiv's warning. The village was silent, not the peaceful kind of silence, but the kind that comes after something breaks and no one knows how to fix it. The school gate remained chained. Girls sat outside in the dirt, their small notebooks clutched in their hands, eyes wide with confusion. They didn't understand land rights or property disputes. They just knew they had lost their second home. Anna sat with them, reading from memory, her voice calm but tired. Her strength had limits, and Sundar could see she was nearing them. For the first time, he noticed the fatigue in her shoulders, the hollowness beneath her words. She had always been the stronger one, the bolder one. But now she seemed like someone walking through water, holding her breath, pretending not to drown. As Sundar watched, a strange feeling crept into his chest. It wasn't just anger at Rajiv or the fear of losing this school. It was something deeper, something that didn't have a name yet. He had spent so many years believing his sister didn't need saving. Now he wasn't sure she hadn't been crying out for help all along. They began work on the new classroom that afternoon. Not with cement or bricks, those would come later. First, they cleared space beneath the banyan tree beside the locked school building. Villagers brought mats. Sundar carried benches. Anna organized a group of older girls to lead lessons for the younger ones. It wasn't much, but it was something, and sometimes something is all you need to fight back against nothing. After a long day, Sundar sat with Anna in the small guest house where he was staying. It was dark, and the generator coughed in the background. The air was thick with humidity and unspoken words. "You should rest," he said. She nodded, then looked away. But something was off. He noticed the way her fingers tapped the edge of her chair. Not nervousness, guilt. He knew that rhythm. He used to do the same thing before, telling their parents he'd broken something in the house. "What is it?" he asked. Anna hesitated. Then finally she said it. "There's something I didn't tell you." Sundar didn't move. Anna stood up, walked to the window, and stared out into the night. "I told you the land was taken without warning, but that's not entirely true," she said. 6 months ago, I got a letter. A formal notice. I didn't understand all of it. Legal language. It said the land was being reviewed, but I ignored it. She turned around, her eyes wet. I thought if I didn't respond, it would go away. I was wrong. Sundar felt his heart sink. "Anna," he said slowly, "why didn't you say something?" "Because I was ashamed," she said. "I wanted to be strong. I wanted to be the one who saved this place, not the one who let it be taken. And when I saw your name on the news, leading the biggest company in the world, I didn't want to be the sister who failed." Her voice cracked. I thought I could fix it, but instead I made it worse. There was silence between them, heavy, raw. Then Sundar spoke, not with anger, but with something softer. "Do you know why I came here, Anna?" She looked at him, confused. "Because when we were kids, and everything was hard money, food, school, it was you who kept me going. You told me stories that made me believe in things bigger than myself. You made me think I could build something worth building." He paused. "You're still doing that, even now." Anna wiped her eyes. "But what if we lose?" Sundar took a breath. "Then we lose together, but we don't lie to each other again." She nodded, slowly. A promise without words. The next morning, things got worse. A group of men arrived at the edge of the makeshift classroom. They wore matching shirts with a company logo Sundar didn't recognize. They carried clipboards and phones, taking photos of the children and the space beneath the banyan tree. Anna approached them, calm but firm. "Can I help you?" One of them smirked. "You're illegal using private land. This land belongs to the village," she said. "Not anymore," he replied. He handed her a paper. Sundar walked over and took it, scanning it quickly. It was a cease and desist order. The same type Rajiv's companies had used years ago to crush competition before it even began. Anna looked at him. "Can he really stop us from teaching outside?" Sundar shook his head. "He can't, not yet. He's bluffing." But the damage had been done. The girls looked scared again. The villagers stepped back. Hope, that fragile thing they'd begun to rebuild, trembled in the wind. Sundar turned to the man. "You can take pictures all day, but we're not leaving. And if your boss has a problem, he can come tell me himself." The man didn't reply. He just took another photo and left Dot back in the guest house. Sundar opened his laptop and connected to the village's weak internet signal. He didn't want to go public. Not yet, but he needed leverage. Something Rajiv wouldn't expect. He reached out to an old friend in Singapore who worked in ethics compliance. Another in Bangalore who tracked real estate corruption. Within hours, they began sending him data small things. Patterns of bribery, unusual property transfers, shell companies linked to Rajiv's business empire. It wasn't enough to bring Rajiv down, but it was enough to corner him. If Sundar pushed the right buttons. As the sun set, Anna joined him again. She sat beside him, silent for a while. You're really not the same Sundar who left, she said finally. He smiled faintly. Neither are you. Do you regret coming? He looked at her, not for a second. Then she asked the question. He wasn't expecting, what if this isn't about the school? He blinked. What do you mean? What if it's about something else? She said, what if Rajiv didn't just want revenge on you? What if he knew it would bring you here? What if he wanted to draw you in? The idea sent a chill down Sundar's spine. It made no sense. But also, it did. He closed the laptop. And for the first time since arriving, he wasn't sure who was chasing who. Asterisk the soil beneath their feet. Sky was dark with heavy clouds as the fourth day began. It had rained during the night hard, without warning. Now the earth outside the school was soaked, muddy, scattered with broken leaves and fallen branches. The village looked quieter than usual, as if it too was holding its breath. Inside the guest house, Sundar sat by the window, laptop closed, phone untouched. Anna was still asleep on the cot beside him, her arm draped over her face. He hadn't told her everything yet. Not the full results of what his friends had sent him the night before. Not the names he had seen, names that didn't belong in legal files. Names that had no reason to be connected to Rajiv's growing empire. But there it was, typed clearly in a Scanlan document from 1980-5. Gopinath Pichai. Their father. Sundar stared at it for a long time. He didn't know how to feel. Part of him wanted to believe it was a mistake, a coincidence, but deep down, something had already shifted. Something old and unfinished had started to rise. Asterisk. He remembered their father as a quiet man, proud, strong in values, but humble in speech. He had worked in a factory most of his life, building electrical components, coming home with grease on his shirt and a kind smile for his children. He had taught them the value of simplicity. Never take more than you give. Always stand for what's right. But he had also been a man of secrets when Sundar was 14. He remembered waking up late one night to hushed voices in the other room. His father had been speaking to someone, a stranger. Their tone was urgent, nervous. Sundar never asked about it. The next morning, everything was normal again. But now, sitting with this paper in his hand, he wondered what that conversation had really been about. Because according to this document, their father had once owned the very piece of land the school now stood on, and somehow he had sold it to someone with no name, just a company, registered in Delhi. 40 years later, that company had ended up in Rajiv's hands. When Anna finally woke, the first thing she asked was whether Sundar had slept. He lied. A little, he said. She rubbed. Her eyes sat up and reached for the kettle to boil water for tea. She looked thinner than she had a week ago, her cheeks more hollow, her smile more tired. Any news? She asked. He hesitated. Yeah, he said slowly, but I don't know what it means yet. He handed her the scanned page. She read it. Then. Read it again. Her hands trembled slightly. This can't be real, she whispered. Appa would never, he couldn't have. But the page said otherwise. Maybe he didn't know what he was doing, Sundar said. Maybe he was tricked or forced. Anna shook her head. Or maybe we didn't know him as well as we thought. Neither of them spoke for a long time. The rain started again, softly this time, like footsteps on the roof. That afternoon, they went to visit someone who might know the truth. His name was Velu. He was 83 years old, and he had once worked alongside their father. He lived in a single-room house with peeling walls and stacks of newspapers piled up in the corner. When they arrived, Velu was sitting outside, carving wood with a small rusted knife. "Ah, the Pichai children," he said, without looking up. "I knew you'd come." Sundar knelt beside him. "You knew?" Velu nodded. "The land, the school, Rajiv. It's all part of the same story. I've been waiting for someone to ask the right question." Anna crouched too. "What happened?" "Uncle?" Velu sighed and leaned back. "Your father was a good man," he said, "but he was desperate. You were small then. Your mother was sick. The hospital in Chennai cost more than he had. No one would give him a loan, not the bank, not the union. And one day, a man came." "What kind of man?" Sundar asked. "Slick. City clothes. Said he could help. All your father had to do was sign a paper. Not sell the land, just lease it. Short term, no risk. The land was unused back then. Your father thought he could get it back." Velu looked up at them now, but it was a trick. The paper was fake. It transferred ownership permanently. Anna swallowed. "Why didn't he fight?" "He tried," Velu said. "But the man vanished. No name, no office, just like a shadow. Your father was broken after that. Ashamed. But he never told your mother." "Never told you." Sundar stared at the ground. "And Rajiv?" He asked. "How did he come in?" Velu leaned closer. "His father ran the company that bought the land. Years later, Rajiv inherited it. He found out it used to belong to the Pichai family, and he didn't forget that name. Back in the village, the air felt heavier. Sundar sat beneath the banyan tree where the children had started gathering again. The makeshift school continued, but now there was a new weight in the air. The knowledge that their own family's past was part of the reason for this fight, not just injustice, but legacy. Not just a villain, but a wound handed down across generations. He watched the children laugh and play, unaware of the storm brewing around them. And he knew he had to act fast. He opened his laptop again and began writing. Not code, not an email, but a story. Personal one. He wrote about the school, about his sister, about the land, about the secret that had nearly destroyed their family. He wrote it all not as a CEO, not as a hero, but as a brother and a son trying to make things right. When he was done, he had sent Dot to a journalist. He trusted Dot, not one from Silicon Valley Dot, but from Chennai. The article went live 2 days later. A Google CEO, a village school, and a land deal that began with a lie. It spread fast. Dot first across local media. Dot then national. Dot then global. Dot people read. And not because it was dramatic, but because it was human. Dot raw. Dot honest. Dot Sundar didn't hide the truth. He didn't protect his family from the shame of it, and because of that, people believed it. The next day, the education minister of Tamil Nadu called him. Dot then came the phone call from Rajiv. Sundar didn't answer. Dot instead. He walked with Anna through the village as people came out to thank them. Not because the battle was won, but because it was finally seen. Finally, real Dot children ran beside them, holding books. High Dot old men nodded with silent respect. A woman placed a garland around Anna's neck, and as they walked, a boy ran up to Sundar, breathless. He held a torn piece of paper in his hand. "Sir," he said, "they're coming." "Who?" "Men." "With trucks." Anna turned to Sundar, eyes wide. They both ran. Asterisk the price of standing still. The sound reached them before the sight did. Deep, metallic, like the roar of something ancient. It echoed through the narrow dirt paths of the village, bouncing off homes, made of clay and tin. Sundar and Anna stood frozen for half a second as the vibrations pulsed under their feet. Then they ran. Dot through fields still wet from last night's rain, past open doors where villagers stood watching in confusion, past children clutching books to their chests, not understanding why their teachers were suddenly running toward something instead of away. When they reached the edge of the school grounds, they saw it. Dot a yellow excavator, huge, unforgiving, crawling forward like it belonged there. Behind it, a black truck carrying uniformed workers in helmets and vests. And standing in front of them all, A tall man in a white shirt with sunglasses perched arrogantly on his nose. Rajiv. Anna stopped first. Her hands clenched at her sides. Her breathing sharp, shallow. Sundar stepped forward without hesitation. Stop. That machine. He shouted. Rajiv turned slowly, smiling like a man greeting an old friend at a party. You're just in time, he said. Didn't want you to miss the show. The workers hesitated, unsure. You can't touch that building, Sundar said. The case is still under review. Rajiv shrugged. The land is mine. The structure is condemned. And your case? He scoffed. A formality. Anna stepped forward. This school is not just bricks. It's history. It's memory. It's home. It's also illegal, Rajiv replied. You lost, Anna. It's over. And for a second, Sundar almost believed him, because it felt like losing. The school had been locked. The classroom under the banyan tree was a symbol, not a solution. The legal fight was barely beginning, and now the past had come crawling out of its grave to accuse their father of the very betrayal they had fought against. He looked at the building. Faded paint, cracked windows, sagging roof. It wasn't beautiful, but it had life. It had been built with sweat, funded by kindness, kept alive by Anna's courage and the children's belief that they were worth more than what the world told them. And now a machine was ready to crush all of it in minutes. Something inside Sundar broke open. He walked toward the excavator and stood directly in front of it. Go ahead, he said. You want to destroy it? You'll have to go through me. The workers stopped the engine. Anna stared at him. Stunned. Rajiv, single quotes, S face darkened. Don't be stupid. Sundar didn't move. You don't understand, Rajiv said, stepping closer. This isn't personal. It's strategic. I'm not here to settle scores. I'm here to clear obstacles. This building, this village, they're irrelevant. They're not irrelevant to the people who live here, Sundar said. And they're not irrelevant to me. You think being a CEO makes you untouchable? Rajiv sneered. This isn't Silicon Valley. This is the real world. Here, power is about fear, about knowing people like you won't stay long enough to matter. Sundar looked him in the eye. I am still here. That moment changed everything. The villagers began to gather. One by one, they didn't shout. They didn't threaten. They simply stood. Next to Sundar. Then next to Anna. Then in front of the machine. Dozens of them. Farmers, mothers, teachers, children. They didn't speak the language of politics or law. They didn't understand legal loopholes or international investments. But they understood what was right. And what was wrong. Rajiv looked around, suddenly uncomfortable. His plan had been simple: intimidate, destroy, move on. He had done it before, to others, to bigger voices than these. But this was different. This wasn't about business. This was about something far harder to silence. People willing to stand still, even when everything told them to run. Fine, Rajiv said at last. You win today? He gestured to the workers. The machine reversed. The trucks pulled away. And just like that, he was gone. But Sundar knew. It wasn't over. It never is when money is involved, when pride is involved, when wounds run deeper than anyone wants to admit. That night, the village celebrated, not with firecrackers or music, but with food passed hand to hand. A kind of quiet joy. Children ran between the trees, laughing again. The fear had lifted, if only for a while. Sundar sat on the steps of the school building, looking up at the stars. Anna sat beside him, holding a cup of steaming tea. I've never seen you do something like that, she said. I've never had to, he replied. She leaned her head against his shoulder. What happens now? She asked. We rebuild, he said. But first we protect what's left. At dawn, Sundar made a decision. He drafted a legal notice to freeze all action on the property. Then, using contacts he hadn't spoken to in years, he arranged an independent investigation into the original sale from their father's time. He also contacted a foundation that focused on restoring community schools across India. But that wasn't the hardest part. The hardest part was writing one more email to his team back in California. In it, he explained what he was doing, why he had to stay longer. Why he might be away for a while. He didn't ask for approval. He just told the truth because something had shifted inside him, not just in how he saw his family or his past, but in how he saw himself. He had spent years building tools to change the world, but now he realized the world was changed by people who refused to move when it mattered most. Then, just as he had said, Anna knocked on the door. She held a letter in her hand. An envelope, yellowed with time. "I found this," she said, in one of Appa's old books. Sundar opened it slowly. Inside was a handwritten note, dated the year the land had been sold. "I did what I had to do to save her. But if this land ever returns to our name, let it belong to the children. Always." His father had written it. Too. No. Maybe to them. Maybe to himself. Anna began to cry. Not from pain. From release. Sundar placed the letter on the desk and looked at her. "Then let's make sure it does." Asterisk, the letter that should never have existed. The morning light filtered in gently through the window of the old guest house. Dust danced in the beams, suspended like tiny secrets, still waiting to be revealed. Sundar sat at the small wooden table, with his father's letter resting before him. He had read it over and over, each time hearing his father's voice more clearly in the words. The simple phrasing, the worn handwriting, the ache buried between the lines. It wasn't a legal document. It wasn't notarized. But it felt like a will written in blood. Let it belong to the children, always. But nothing is ever final. Not when legacy, land, and memory are tangled together. Anna burst through the door without knocking. Her face was pale, her lips pressed tight. "A new document just came in," she said, barely breathing, "from Rajiv's lawyer." Sundar stood up. Anna handed him the envelope. It was thinner than the last, freshly printed, too clean to trust. He opened it and read. And suddenly, the walls seemed closer, the air harder to breathe. It was a revised deed, registered years after their father's death. It claimed that an amendment had been filed by a distant uncle, someone. They barely remembered transferring the land to a third-party holding company. That company, it said, had sold the land to Rajiv's father's business, legally. No fraud. No bribes. Just paper, filed quietly, when no one was looking. And it was signed, not by their father, but by someone who claimed to be his brother. Sundar stared at the signature. It didn't match. Anna grabbed the document, her fingers shaking. "This is fake. It has to be." "I know," Sundar said quietly. "But proving that won't be easy." They both knew what this meant. The original legal case would stall. Their father's story would come under suspicion. The article Sundar had shared would be called emotional, not factual. And Rajiv would have everything he needed to bury the school for good. Unless they found something stronger. Something undeniable. That night, Sundar did something he rarely did. He returned to the house they had grown up in. The small, crumbling structure sat at the edge of the city now, surrounded by taller buildings and newer lives. It had been rented out for years, but the tenants had left recently. Anna unlocked the door with a rusty key. It creaked open like a memory being disturbed. Inside, the air was thick with age. The walls were stained, but the shape of their childhood still clung to the corners. The spot where their father used to read the newspaper. The corner where Anna had hidden her report cards. The floor where Sundar had once spent hours building model radios from discarded parts. They moved slowly through the rooms, almost afraid to touch anything. And then, in the back bedroom, Anna found it. A tin box beneath a loose floorboard. Old photos, hospital bills, letters, and tucked beneath them, folded 3 times over, was a notebook. Not filled with engineering notes. Not full of company names or addresses. But stories by their father. About children. About learning. About why he had fought so hard to keep that land from slipping away. And on the final page, in neat Tamil script, was a sentence that made Sundar sit down on the floor and press his hand to his chest. "I could not save the land. But if they ever return to it, they must not forget education belongs to everyone. or it belongs to no one. Anna covered her mouth. Tears rolled silently down her cheeks. Sundar held the notebook tightly. This is what we needed. It won't hold up in court, Anna whispered. It will hold up in hearts, Sundar said. And maybe, if we show the world again, it will pressure the system. Maybe the law can follow where truth leads. The next day, Sundar sat before 3 cameras in a small makeshift studio in the village. No suit, no stage, no production dot, just a man telling a story. He spoke plainly. About his father, about the school, about the lies they had uncovered and the truths they were still searching for. He held the notebook up, read the last page, and looked directly into the lens. I have built tools that reached billions, he said, but today I ask not as a CEO, but as a son, as a brother, as a witness to something more important than power. Education is not a gift. It is a right. And this fight, this small fight in a forgotten village, is about more than land. It's about what we're willing to stand for when standing comes at a cost. He paused. You can take away buildings, but you cannot take away the need to learn, and we will not move. Not this time. The video went viral, not because of who. It was, but because of what he said, the story spread again. Its time deeper. Families, teachers, activists. People who had never heard of Pichai before now knew his father's name. Knew Anna's face, knew the banyan tree, and the classroom underneath it. A week later, the government issued a formal investigation into the sale of the school land. A handwriting expert reviewed the new document, submitted by Rajiv's lawyer. It was forged. And just like that, the house of cards began to fall. Rajiv's investors pulled out quietly. His permit to build a resort was revoked, and though he never faced trial, he vanished from public life, his name for a time, spoken only in caution. But that wasn't the victory Sundar remembered most. It was the day, 3 months later, when Anna handed a pair of silver scissors to a 10-year-old girl in a blue uniform and told her to cut the ribbon. A new school building stood behind them. Small, but bright. Painted by the villagers themselves. Funded not by a corporation, but by a wave of donations that came in from people all over the world, people who believed the children deserved more than uncertainty. And when the ribbon was cut, Sundar didn't give a speech. He just stood at the back of the crowd. Watching. Anna. Watching the children. Watching the future walk forward with dusty shoes and hopeful eyes. Later that evening, Anna joined him beneath the banyan tree. So, she said, nudging him. Still planning to go back to Google next week? He smiled faintly. Maybe not right away. You know they'll survive without you. I know. She looked at him. You didn't come here to save us. He nodded. I came here to remember who I was. She leaned against him. And I think, he said quietly, we all have something worth standing for. This was mine.